Welcome back, I'm GTGD and this is video 9 where I'm going to set up the construction system UI. Okay, I've opened up my pixel art file and I'm just going to make a new pixel art here. This one's going to be an eraser, so I'm just going to pick the line tool, make it 16 pixels wide, just make a straight line, something like that. Select it, just rotate it thereabouts. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay, and just move it into place roughly here. I'm just going to get the paint bucket tool, fill it with like a reddish color. Actually, that'll do fine. I don't mind that at all. So I'm going to set it to 2 pixels now. I'm going to draw a straight line underneath to represent something getting erased. And I'm just going to draw it just pretty much like that. And that is that for this icon. Super simple. So make sure to download it as well. Okay, now I'm going to duplicate actually my floor layer. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate that. Move it all the way up. Okay, and just turn off the eraser, turn on the floor. All I'm going to do, this is going to be the background of my construction UI. So something pretty simple. I'm going to just use the paint bucket tool. I have all similar colors checked. And I'm going to go ahead. What I want to do is just fill this dark color for the borders. And I'm just going to take the second darkest brown shade and put that in. And also get rid of the highlights there. And I'm going to download this and also save the pixel file out and bring it all into Unity. Okay, so in Unity, I'll go ahead and select my 2 new icons. Set their pixels to unit to 64, mesh type full rect, trilinear. And of course max size 64, hit apply. But for the construction UI background, I'll also set the wrap mode to repeat and hit apply, so that there won't be a warning message when I use it as a UI background. I won't like it when I put it into tiling mode without setting that option. And then I'm just going to make a canvas construction. Alright, and I guess, well, that's a canvas obviously, and I'll add a UI panel. And for the panel, I'm going to set it across the bottom of the screen. So Shift to move the anchor, Alt to reposition. I'm just going to change its height to 110. So great, it's now on the bottom of the screen. I'm going to add to it a UI scroll view as well. So UI scroll view. Once again, this thing I want it to fill up that UI space. So I'm just going to stretch it across the screen. Shift and Alt, and that's it. It went across. I'm going to change the background image to the construction UI background. I'm going to change the image type to tiled. And I'll of course increase the opacity as well. It's faded at the moment, so there we go. And change pixels per unit multiplier to 2. I think that looks a bit better. I'm also going to turn off the vertical scroll bar, no need for that. When you run the game, actually, they won't appear anyway until you have enough content in them. So now that's taking us to the content component, or game object inside of there. This one is a bit fidgety to play with. I never get it right in the first go to try and get stuff to fit correctly in it. But I do know that what I'll do is I'll just put in something in there, just to help me visualize it. So I'm going to add in a button for now. Just hit that. I'm going to actually have the size of this button as 50 by 50, and I need this to help me understand that I'm doing stuff correctly with this content. You can see it's not fitting correctly, so I'm going to try fooling around and see what I can do. So I select the fill, press Alt, press Shift, whatever, try any old thing to get it to work. But I need a horizontal layout group and that content size fitter. I'll put this one first. The horizontal layout group, I'm going to pick lower left. I'm also going to give it some padding as well, so stuff is not sitting on the edges, basically. So I guess for the padding, I'll basically put in like 10, all around 10, 10, 10, and spacing of 5. I don't like to try and expand the child, force expand the child, use child scale instead. I'm going to put in the content size fitter now. And this is necessary to have the scroll bars work in the first place. Now, it's not really going to work. The scroll bars are not going to. So why don't I just demonstrate that? So I'm just going to fill this thing up full of buttons and hit play. And you see there's no scroll bar. and it just springs back. That's because I need to set the content size fitter horizontal fit to minimum size, and now it will work, but it's still messed up. It's still like, what's going on here? Why is it spreading out like that? This is one of the quirkinesses of these components. I find that you've really got to sort of fool around and try and get it to actually fit. So I'm going to use Shift and Alt. I'm going to give that a go at least. That looks like it moved it to the correct place. So if that works, I'm probably going to leave it alone at that. This is the sort of thing you have to do when you have these components. I think it's something to do with the content size fitter and the content and having scroll bars, or I'm not sure if that's what's affects it, but I would just find it's very fidgety, and you have to use the Shift to move the anchor and Alt to reposition that. But at least we have our scroll bar. It's working now. So okay, so that's pretty good. So let's undo that. Let's get rid of all of these buttons. We're going to make our own button. I'll just save our progress so far, and I'm going to call this button delete mode. I will also make a prefab out of it and change its name for all the other buttons for the construction UI. For this button, I'm going to change the sprite to the eraser. Okay. Let's see, the text as well. I'm going to call it like tool tip text, and I'm going to move it. So I'm just going to zoom into that right here. Move it up here like that. Expand this out a bit, shrink the height a bit, and for this, change the font definitely to that pixel font. Change the font size down to like 12, change the color to white, and change the alignment to left. And that's looking quite a bit better as a tooltip text. I also would like to add a border, so I'm going to add to the button a UI image. And I'm just going to set here to fill the space. So Shift and Alt, just make sure it's all centered and in. And I'm going to give it a default sprite, so a default UI sprite from Unity. And that gives us the option of fill center, because this is a nice image and has borders. I'm just going to turn off fill center. It's starting to give me a nice looking border there. I'm going to increase the scale to 1.1 in X, 1.1 in Y, and that just looks a bit better in my opinion. I'm going to rename this to like image border, so that's looking better yet again. Well, to me, for that purpose. Let's see, I want to add some events to this as well. Also, when you I think just change the highlighted color to something. I have all sorts of like things that I've saved over time as well. So I'm going to pick this UI border. It's this color right here. If you want to save stuff, you just click this little button here. It'll save your color then. It'll be across all your projects, even different versions of Unity, which is pretty handy. So I'll just pick that color. Actually, no, it's kind of an awful color, but whatever. I'll just pick that color. It'll stand out. Then I'm going to add a event trigger. I'm going to add because I want the tooltip text to appear when you move the mouse over it and disappear when you move the mouse off it. So I'm going to add a new event type of pointer enter. Just add something here, and it's the tooltip text that I want to affect, and I want game object set active and to true. So it'll turn on. That's how you turn it on. And I'm going to add another event type, which is a pointer exit, and nicely it's filled it for me. And for this, when you exit, it's just going to turn it off, which is great. I will also add an on-click method here as well. And just for the moment, just let me create a prefab out of this. So I'm just going to create a prefab, and I'm going to just turn this. I don't want this to be a prefab, so I'm going to unpack completely. Just that I will have based off that, because it's the same sort of layout. So I'm just going to say construction buttons, construction button prefab is what I'll call it. And I can now open this prefab up. Okay, and for the prefab, I do need to leave the tooltip text on. You'll see by code, I'm going to access it and change what's written in here. So that's pretty much that. In fact, I don't think I need to do anything more here. If I've forgotten something, I'll get back to it and fix it up. Let's see, for the tooltip text, I'm going to say delete mode. So when the player hovers over it, that's what they'll see. I'll now turn off the tooltip text, save our progress so far. Alright, so that's the delete mode tooltip text appearing. Let's just see what happens for sake of completeness if I duplicate tons of these buttons. And yeah, great. Okay, so it looks like our UI is working. Let's turn that off. And for the button delete mode, let's add a on-click method, and it's gonna access game manager. So I'll put that in, and it's gonna be game manager tile placement, and it's going to call set build mode to delete. So we can actually now start deleting stuff. So if I just save this, and I just hit play and just have a look in here. So I can just right click build. Obviously we need to populate this with the others so we can build stuff. Okay, now I can select this. We're in delete mode, and there we go. I can right click and delete stuff. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention in the previous video, I forgot to just show you that when you do add stuff, yeah, the nav mesh updates, and you can see that in real time in the editor. Okay, so I'll just stop that. I do want to add something else. I just want to have like this active brush sort of a window, so that way it's kind of easy to see what your currently selected option is, your build option. I'm just going to minimize this and add in a new canvas. I'm going to call this canvas active brush. Great. Okay. So I'll just minimize that. I thought I had minimized it, but anyway, so canvas active brush, and on it I'll add a panel. So let's go ahead and do that. So UI panel, and I'm going to change its anchoring style to bottom left. Shift it over there, Alt as well, so Shift and Alt. I'm going to change its size as well to like 50, say 50 by 50. Perhaps like that. And then I will actually, I think I'll just manually move it up. And yeah, okay, whatever, I'll just try that. Let's move it up. So, okay, yeah, that looks alright. I will change its color. So I'm just give it a UI border, the blue one. Yep, good, maximum opacity. I'm going to turn off the fill center, and yeah, that's basically it. So to it, I think I'll add also like an image as well, so the sprite will be set when we select whatever we select. So I'm going to just put in here UI image, and I guess for it I'm just going to set this to fill completely. So Alt, bring that in. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's the image, pretty much done there. For that image, I'm just trying to think though. I'm just trying to think. Okay, so I've done that much, but actually no, I won't do fill. I'm actually going to do center, and reason for that is because I realize I want to see the border, right? So I'm gonna not 4,000, but go to the next one, 40. There we go. That's a lot better. Okay, so that's looking very good. So I've got my active brush canvas done. I think I've just about got what I need, so why don't I go ahead and start doing some scripting. And I'm going to open up the game manager tile placement script, and I'm going to add some more variables to this. So the stuff that I've just added for the UI, I'm going to have in here public transform construction UI scroll view content. It's a long name, but that's what I choose to call it, so I know exactly what it is. Public game object, and it's a button prefab. I'm going to slot in our prefab here and then instantiate it in game, and then public image image active brush, so I can then swap out the sprite inside of the image, and public sprite delete sprite. So that way when I select the delete button, at least it'll change the sprite to be the delete sprite. Okay, so I'll save that. Those are my variables, and here I had this thing that I need to populate the UI, so we are gonna get to that. What I am gonna go and do is that inside of set build mode delete, I'm actually gonna set this active brush now. So I'm gonna say image active brush dot sprite is equal to delete sprite. Very good. And I realize I put a comment in here that I'm going to set the active brush and set build mode to construct, but that's not true. I'm going to turn that off. Delete that. It's actually in set tile to place. That's the only place that I need to do it, and it'll be just set. So image active brush, image active brush dot sprite is equal to tile database dot array of tile database, and we'll pass in this index here, and it'll be basically dot sprite. So that's pretty much that. So dot sprite, and that's how I'll assign the image that's inside of the database, that sprite image inside of the database, to the image active brush. So very good. So I've got those done. Now I'm going to actually make the new method that I want to call from start, which is to populate the UI. So how about I just go down to the bottom and just make this new method. So I'm going to call it void populate UI with construction options. Okay, round brackets, curly braces, and away we go. And how I'm going to do that is to just iterate through the database, the tile database, and I'm going to then instantiate a button and assign various things that will happen when you click on it. Okay, so let's make a start. So for int I is equal to 0, I is less than tile database dot array of tiles database dot length, and I plus plus. So we'll keep iterating through the whole array there. And now I'm going to say int, I'm going to make up an integer stored index. Now I've got to do this. I have to do this. Otherwise, when I assign stuff to the onClick method, which I'm about to do, it'll just end up being the last item. So if there are 6 items inside of the database, it'll just, for whatever reason, it's going to be I is equal to 6. It's not going to actually capture this, and it's something to do with that the variable I loses scope while you're iterating through this, and this is pretty normal in programming languages. So the solution is to actually capture I when you need it inside of the for loop, and then assign that to something like the buttons and stuff, which is going to action that, use that bit of data. Otherwise it'll be all wrong. So next I'm going to actually instantiate game object geo. I'm going to actually instantiate the game object and assign it to a temporary variable. So that's why I'm saying game object geo, just making that name up. Instantiate, and what am I going to instantiate? It's the button prefab. And what sort of parent? What's the parent for it? It's the construction scroll view, UI scroll view content. That's the parent, because that's where I want it to be, right? I want it to be basically inside of here. So inside of this content area, I'm just gonna be instantiating buttons and then dropping them inside of the content space. Okay, so that's that bit done. So now we've got captured our game object geo that we've just instantiated. Now we're going to say geo.getComponent. What's the type of the component? It's the button itself, and put the round brackets there as well. And then onClick.onClick.addListener. So a rather unusual bit of code here. And then you're going to put a round bracket and say delegate. I mean, you'll just have to do this just as how I'm doing it. Why it has to be exactly like this, that's beyond my understanding, but this is what you have to do. So add in the delegate, so set build mode to construct. So that's, now I'm calling that method that we wrote previously, called set build mode to construct. So automatically, whenever you click on any of the construction buttons, it's just going to set the build mode to construct. So if it was delete, it'll now become construct, because that's obviously what you want to do if you're clicking on one of these buttons. So set build mode to construct. Let's close it now with the round brackets. Put a semicolon, and now I'm going to put the curly bracket, and then the round bracket, and then end it with a semicolon. So that's what you have to do to add a basically assign an action for the button when you click on it by code. So because we can't do it in the inspector, obviously we're instantiating this button as we go. Now I'm going to copy that line because I'm going to add another thing for it to do. So go.getComponent button.onClick.addListener. This time I'm going to call the setTileToPlace method. setTileToPlace, and in this case I'm going to pass in basically the stored index value. Stored index. So this is going to serve as, this is the index. This is basically the item in that array that the player wants to construct. So it's very simple for us that we just set the tile to place to this value. And it just draws on the database, and then yep, that's it. So that's the tile that we want to place. So it's nice and clean that way. Now the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to actually access the tooltip text. It's a child game object, as you notice, though. It's not on the parent game object. It's one layer lower. So to get to it, we're going to say go.getComponent in children. And the component that we're going to get is the TMP text. So TMP underscore text, round brackets, dot text. And we're going to set it to equal to tile database dot array of tile database, and we're gonna use this. We can use I actually for this one. We can use I or stored index, but doesn't matter. I guess I'll just use stored index. Array of tiles database stored index dot sprite dot name. Because our sprites have a file name, right? So I'm just gonna put that name on as the tooltip text. So nice and simple there as well. And I'm now going to turn on that tooltip text. So I'm going to say go.transform.getChild. So get the very first child in its hierarchy, which is the text. Well, let's actually just make sure that it is actually the first child. So if I go to the prefab, and I go to the button prefab, and I open it, yeah, this first item is the tooltip text. So it'll be index 0, and the second item is index 1 here. Which is the image border, and we don't need to do anything to the image border. So yeah, it's correct to say get child item 0 basically. Get child 0 item 0, and say dot game object dot set active is equal to false. Right, so, I'm not sure what I said earlier. If I said I have to set it to true, that's completely wrong. Because as you know, the tooltip text has to be active. So if the tooltip text, so if this thing in the prefab, so if I come back here, if this tooltip text is disabled, that line of code will not be able to find it. So you can try it out. Go ahead and disable it. This line of code will not be able to find this TMP text, and it will throw a null reference error and not be happy. So you have to leave it active so it can find it when you instantiate it. Now once I've instantiated it, then I better just turn it off because I don't need every single tooltip text showing above the button. So I'm going to say go.transform.getChild 0.gameObject.setActive false. And I think that's basically our code. Now let's actually remember to call this method up above. So let's go up here and in the start method and say populate UI with construction options and save that. And I reckon that should pretty much do it. So let's jump into Unity. Oh, and obviously we haven't set any references to anything, so why don't we go and do that? So we have to set our content into here. So that's what it was. This command is like, what are you talking about? I don't know where any of what you're talking about is. And fair enough, how would it? So and then for the canvas active brush, I'm going to add the image. Actually, I should just rename this to something a bit better. I'm going to call it image active brush, so it's really clear what is getting referred to there. So let's put an image active brush, and the delete sprite is going to be the eraser icon there. So I've got everything assigned now, so I'll save that and run it. Okay, and so what have I got here? I've got here, well, everything's got the same icon, so that's no good. So let's go ahead and sort that out. So I think though if I do select it, yeah, it is actually building, it's assigning the correct icon over there, but unfortunately the correct sprite isn't showing on the button, so I'm going to just fix that. I probably just forgot to add a bit of code into that, so let's go have a look at that into our populate UI with construction options. And yeah, pretty much obviously what I've done is I've forgotten to adjust any sprite thing on this. Like I've gone to the button, added these listeners, change the tooltip text, turn off the tooltip text. Why don't I now also go get component, and the component is an image, so it's nice and simple at least. It's dot sprite, so image dot sprite is going to equal to tile database dot array of tiles database, and just pass in our stored index, and basically I'm going to pass in that dot sprite. Okay, so that should help quite a bit more, so why don't we jump back and have a look at that. And if I hit play this time around, I would hope that I'll get a better result, and that's looking much better. So very good. So now I can actually start building stuff, and I can put a door in there, for example. Yeah, I can walk right through. Now why don't I just maximize for a moment so I can see things a bit clearer. Go ahead and start building this and that. Build up this whole space, fill up the floor, and put some windows as well. Put another door, put in some fields. Anyway, you get the idea. If I select delete mode and I click something, I can delete it. All good. And you can see it changes the icons to whatever I'm wanting to build, which is great. So that's really nice. So our construction system is working nicely, and we have our UI for it set up as well. So overall, I would say that's very good. Now the next video will be pretty interesting. I'm going to get onto AI first. So I'm actually going to go and set up our AI in the next video, and then I'm going to come back to setting up our main menu scene, and then I'm going to set up saving the scene and that sort of stuff. So that's what's coming up in the future videos. So next video is going to be all about the AI, some pretty basic AI that responds to time and basically moves to waypoints that we assign. So anyway, I guess I'll see you in the next video.